the chillest spot for IT walkthroughs and reviews, Tech Stack Lounge.
Welcome back, everyone, to Tech Stack Lounge and another deep dive.
Oh, this is going to be a fun one.
Oh, yeah. Today, we're going way back to the 1980s to check out these things called bulletin board systems.
BBSs.
Yeah, BBSs. They were like the early online communities before the internet was really, well, a thing.
Oh, yeah, before the web even.
Exactly.
And we're talking about dial-up modems and text-based interface.
I know, right? We've got some great articles and excerpts from historical websites and wikis that paint a really vivid picture of this era.
Yeah, I mean, it's just amazing how much people were able to do with such limited technology.
I know, right? So let's jump right in and see how these BBSs actually worked. What was it like to actually connect to one?
Okay, so picture this. You've got your computer, and you want to tap into this whole digital world, right? So you pick up your phone, dial a specific number, and then you hook up your modem to the phone line.
And then you hear that screeching sound.
Right, that classic modem handshake.
Oh, the good old days.
It's like nails on a chalkboard, but it's also like the sound of possibility, you know?
I kind of miss it in a weird way.
Yeah, there's something nostalgic about it for sure.
Okay, but seriously, though, wasn't that dial-up connection, like, painfully slow?
Oh, yeah, incredibly slow. Like, we're talking 300 baud, which is basically about 30 characters per second.
30 characters per second.
Per second, yeah. So imagine trying to download a song. It'd take hours, if not all night.
Forget about cat videos, huh?
Oh, yeah, no cat videos back then.
Right.
Everything was text-based, simple black screen with green or amber text sometimes.
I can't even imagine.
It's hard to wrap your head around it now, but even with those limitations, people were still so excited to connect with others who shared their interests, no matter how niche.
I read that some SysOps, that's what they called the BBS administrators, right, would even organize in-person meetups for their users.
They did? Yeah.
That's amazing. It's like the early days of online communities really fostering those personal connections.
It really was, yeah. There was a real sense of community on these BBS.
That's really cool. SysOps, were those like the gatekeepers of the BBS world?
Pretty much, yeah. They had a lot of control over the content and tone of their boards. They set the rules, moderated discussions, and really cultivated the atmosphere.
Like a digital host.
Totally. Yeah. A good SysOp could really make or break a BBS.
It's fascinating how much power and influence they had. So getting back to the technology side of things, there was this thing called the Hayes Smart Modem that came out in 1981.
Ah, the Hayes Smart Modem.
That seemed to be a pretty big deal.
It was a game changer, definitely. Before the Smart Modem, connecting to a BBS was a manual process.
What do you mean manual?
You actually had to, like, type in commands to get your modem to dial and connect.
No way.
Yeah, it was a whole thing. The Smart Modem automated all of that. Plus, it was more affordable, which meant more people could get in on the action.
So it was like the catalyst that really kicked off the BBS craze.
Pretty much, yeah. Once people had easy access, it just exploded.
Okay, so once you're finally connected, what could you actually do on a BBS?
Oh, there was plenty to do, even though it was all text-based. Public message boards were a huge draw, of course.
Like early forums.
Yeah, exactly. People could discuss anything and everything from their favorite bands to current events to technical stuff, you name it.
Did they argue about politics online back then?
Oh, I'm sure they did. People are people.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
What else besides the message boards?
Well, you had private messaging, too.
Okay, so like the precursor to email.
Right, and then there was file sharing. Oh, and games. Don't forget the games.
Wait, games? Like played entirely through text?
Yeah, they were called door games. And they were actually pretty sophisticated, too, not just simple text adventures.
Whoa, hold on. Tell me more about these door games. What were they like?
Okay, so imagine a world where you're exploring dungeons, fighting monsters, trading goods, building empires, all through text commands. You're interacting with other players in real time, and it's all happening within this BBS environment.
That's mind-blowing. It sounds like the precursor to MMOs and MUDs and all those online games we have today.
It was, really. I mean, these games were incredibly popular back then. Some of them even inspired modern games that we still play today.
I'm dying to know what some of these classic door games are called.
Oh, man, there were so many good ones. One of the biggest hits was Legend of the Red Dragon.
Legend of the Red Dragon. What was that about?
Classic dungeon crawler. You create a character, explore dungeons, fight monsters, complete quests, all through text commands, of course.
Sounds pretty intense. What else?
There was Trade Wars, where players bought and sold goods across a simulated galaxy, trying to become the ultimate space tycoon.
Wow. So they had space sims back then, too.
Oh, yeah. And then for the more action-oriented folks, there was Operation, Overkill, a post-apocalyptic RPG.
So something for everyone, huh?
Yeah, pretty much. These games were a huge part of the BBS experience. People would spend hours playing them, forming guilds, competing with each other, and just generally having a blast.
It's just amazing to think that those games, played entirely through text, could capture people's imaginations in the same way that today's graphically intense games do.
Yeah, it's a testament to the power of imagination and storytelling, I think. Without fancy graphics, players had to really rely on their own creativity to visualize the worlds and the characters.
I guess in a way it made the experience even more immersive.
Right. You were really a part of creating the world.
And the social aspect, too, connecting with other players who shared your passion.
Oh, for sure. BBSs were all about connecting with people, and door games just took that to another level.
So we've got message boards, we've got private messaging, we've got file sharing, and we've got these incredible text-based games. What else was there to do on a BBS?
Let's see.
I'm particularly intrigued by this thing called ANSI Art.
Oh, yeah, ANSI Art. That was cool. It's
Yeah.
like a way to add some visual flair to an otherwise purely textual world.
I've seen some examples online. It's really impressive what they were able to do with just text characters and special codes.
It is. Like, some of those ANSI artists were incredibly talented, creating these intricate images and designs.
It's like a whole art form that most people today have never even heard of.
Right. It's kind of a lost art, but it's definitely worth checking out if you're interested in digital art history.
I'll have to do some digging online and see what I can find. But I'm curious, how did these individual BBSs connect with each other? Was it just a bunch of isolated islands of digital communities?
Well, that's where FIDONet comes in.
FIDONet, what was that?
It was a network that connected BBSs all over the world.
Like a precursor to the internet, specifically for BBSs.
Exactly. It allowed users to send messages and files across vast distances, even internationally.
But how did that work? Wasn't everyone still stuck on dial-up back then?
They were, yeah. So FIDONet used this clever store and forward system. Basically, each BBS would bundle messages and files into packets and send them to other BBSs, which would store them and then forward them along to their destinations.
So like a digital relay race.
Kind of, yeah. It's amazing that it worked as well as it did, given the limitations of the technology.
It really shows how resourceful and determined those early online pioneers were.
Absolutely. They were constantly pushing the boundaries of what was possible with the technology they had.
That's inspiring. I'm guessing FIDONet must have had some tricks up its sleeve to make this whole process more efficient, right?
Oh, yeah. They used all sorts of techniques like compression to make the packets smaller, and they even had this concept of National Mail Hour, where BBSs would dedicate a specific time each day to exchange messages.
So it was like a coordinated effort to optimize the whole message exchange process.
Exactly. It was a real community effort. And it worked. FIDONet was a huge success, connecting BBSs all over the world and fostering a truly global online community.
That's just incredible. It makes you wonder what those early online communities would have accomplished if they had the technology we have today.
I know, right? It's mind-boggling to think of.
But of course we know that BBSs eventually faded away. What happened? Did the rise of the internet just kind of make them obsolete?
Yeah, pretty much. Once affordable dial-up internet service became widely available and the World Wide Web took off, BBSs just couldn't compete.
I mean, who wants to stick with a text-based system when you suddenly have access to the entire world with all its multimedia glory, right?
Right. It was a natural progression. People wanted more interactivity, more content, more of everything, and the internet provided all of that in spades.
It's kind of a bittersweet story, isn't it? Like, it's sad to see these vibrant communities disappear.
It is, yeah. But at the same time, it's also exciting to see how those early online pioneers paved the way for the internet we have today.
And it's important to remember that their legacy lives on in so many ways. BBSs were a breeding ground for so many ideas and technologies that we take for granted today, from online communities and online gaming to software distribution and digital art.
Absolutely. BBSs were more than just a technological platform. They were a cultural phenomenon that shaped the way we interact online today. They fostered a sense of community, encouraged creativity, and really paved the way for the digital world we live in.
It's kind of amazing how something that seems so archaic now could have such a profound impact on the future.
I know, right? It just goes to show that innovation can come from anywhere, and that even the most limited technologies can spark incredible creativity and ingenuity.
Well said. So as we move on to the next part of our deep dive, I can't help but wonder, what if BBSs had survived and evolved alongside the internet? What would a modern-day BBS look like?
It really makes you think about what might have been lost in that transition to the modern internet.
Yeah, like we've gained so much in terms of speed and connectivity and all that, but is there something about that early online world that we've kind of left behind?
I think there's a real argument to be made there. Yeah. I mean, think about it. BBS communities were smaller, more tightly knit. There was a shared sense of interest, a sense of locality even. And you had those SysOps, those administrators we talked about, really guiding and shaping those communities.
Yeah, those SysOps seem to have played a really unique role.
They did, definitely. They weren't just like tech support, They were curators, moderators, almost like community organizers in a way.
That's a great way to put it. Like they were hosting these digital parties, making sure everyone felt welcome and engaged.
Exactly. You don't really see that kind of personal touch on the big social media platforms these days, do you?
Not really, no.
Mm-hmm.
More about algorithms and engagement metrics and all that.
Yeah, it's a different world for sure. So, going back to the BBSs themselves, we talked about how they were mostly text-based, but with some visual flair from ANSI Art.
Right.
Were there any other attempts to make them more visually engaging? I mean, was anyone trying to create graphical interfaces or anything like that?
That's a good question. Actually, I did come across some mentions of BBS's experimenting with GUI's graphical user interfaces, but it seems like it was pretty limited.
Yeah, I mean, you got to remember, bandwidth was a major constraint back then. Most users were still on dial-up, so anything too graphically intense would taken forever to load.
Makes sense. So it sounds like those early GUI attempts were kind of ahead of their time.
They were definitely glimpses of what was to come, but the technology just wasn't quite there yet.
It's funny how things come full circle, isn't it? Now we're all about rich multimedia experiences online.
It's the pendulum swing, Technology always seems to go through these cycles.
Okay, one more thing before we move on. You mentioned earlier that BBSs were a hub for the shareware movement.
Oh, yeah, shareware was huge back then.
Can you remind us what shareware was exactly? And how did it fit into the whole BBS ecosystem?
Sure. So shareware was this way for software developers, especially smaller, independent ones, to distribute their programs directly to users.
So like you could download a program from a BBS, try it out,
Yeah.
and then if you liked it, you can send a payment to the developer.
Exactly. It was kind of like an honor system, but it worked surprisingly well.
It sounds like the precursor to app stores and online software distribution as we know it today.
It was, totally. It was a revolutionary concept at the time, and BBSs played a key role in making it happen.
It's amazing how influential BBSs were in shaping the digital landscape we have today.
They really were, yeah. They were like these little incubators of innovation, fostering ideas and technologies that would go on to have a massive impact on the world.
As we've been discussing all of this, it's made me realize that there's a real contrast between the world of BBSs and the internet we have today.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like comparing a quiet coffee shop to a bustling city.
Exactly. BBSs were slow, deliberate, text-based.
Right. You had to savor each interaction.
While the internet is all about speed, instant gratification, and constant stimulation.
It's like we've traded depth for breadth, haven't we?
In some ways, yeah. But I don't think it has to be an either-or situation.
What do you mean?
I think there's room for both in our lives. We can appreciate the speed and convenience of the modern internet while also seeking out those slower, more mindful online experiences.
I like that, like finding those little pockets of calm amidst the chaos.
Exactly. And that's what I find so appealing about the idea of a modern-day BBS. This kind of digital oasis where we can slow down, disconnect from the noise, and reconnect with what really matters.
Yeah, I can definitely see the appeal of that.
Imagine logging into a BBS after a long day and finding a community of people who share your interests, where you can engage in meaningful conversations without the distractions of algorithms and endless feeds.
It sounds almost therapeutic, doesn't it?
It does. Like a digital detox for the soul.
I think you're onto something there. Maybe that's the future of online interaction, finding ways to integrate those slower, more mindful experiences into our digital lives.
Maybe it's not about replacing the internet,
Yeah.
but rather about supplementing it with those kinds of spaces.
Right. Creating a more balanced and holistic online experience.
Well said. Well, I think we covered a lot of ground today.
We have, from the humble beginnings of BBSs to envisioning what a modern-day version might look like.
It's been quite a journey. And on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the world of BBSs. We hope you've enjoyed exploring this fascinating chapter in the history of the internet with us. And who knows, maybe this conversation will inspire some of you to create those digital oases we were just talking about.
That would be amazing.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep connecting, and keep diving deep.
If you like what you're hearing, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Thank you for your support.